There is a reason your heart has felt unusually alert today, as though some quiet part of you has been listening for a sound that has not yet arrived. It is not fear. It is not imagination. It is the strange awareness that comes when someone you love has finally reached the edge of silence and can no longer pretend that everything is fine. Your soulmate has been carrying a sentence inside them. Not a casual sentence. Not something spoken lightly and forgotten. These words have followed them from room to room, through crowded hours and lonely moments, pressing against their chest whenever your name enters their thoughts. I need to tell you something important. They have whispered it when no one was near. They have typed it into a message and erased it before pressing send. They have imagined your face when you hear it, then turned away from the thought because they are afraid of what your eyes might reveal. But tonight, something changed. Picture them standing beside a window as evening settles over the world. The glass is cool beneath their fingertips. Outside, headlights pass in brief silver streaks, people hurry toward homes and destinations, and ordinary life continues as though nothing important is happening. Yet inside that room, your soulmate is completely still. A phone rests on the table behind them. Your name is on the screen. They are not calling yet. They are gathering the courage to become honest. For a long time, they believed silence was the safer choice. They convinced themselves that waiting would protect both of you from confusion. They thought distance might make their feelings easier to understand. They told themselves that if what they felt was real, it would remain quietly contained until the perfect moment appeared. But love does not always obey careful plans. Sometimes it grows stronger in the absence of answers. Sometimes it reveals itself through the things a person cannot stop noticing. Your soulmate has begun noticing everything. The way certain songs no longer sound the same because they remind them of you. The way they search for your presence in places where they know you will not be. The way a simple question from another person can suddenly open a memory they were trying to keep closed. Earlier today, someone asked them, "Are you happy?" It should have been easy to answer. They almost said yes out of habit. But the word would not come. Instead, their eyes dropped toward the floor, and the room became painfully quiet. The person waiting for an answer noticed the hesitation. Your soulmate tried to smile, but it was the kind of smile that asks others not to look too closely. Then came a second question. Who are you thinking about? That was the moment everything shifted. Your name rose in their mind so quickly that they could not hide the reaction on their face. Their shoulders tightened. Their breath caught. A truth they had been carefully managing suddenly became visible to someone else. They did not say your name at first. They only looked away and replied, "Someone I should have spoken to a long time ago." The person beside them did not laugh. They did not change the subject. They leaned closer and asked, "Then why haven't you?" Your soulmate had no answer that sounded honest. They could have blamed timing. They could have blamed circumstances. They could have pointed toward misunderstandings, old wounds, unfinished responsibilities, or the fear of being rejected. But beneath every excuse was one simple truth. They were afraid that their honesty might arrive too late. That fear has been following them for longer than you know. There was a moment in the past when they almost told you everything. You may remember a conversation that seemed to pause at the edge of something deeper. Their voice changed. Their expression softened. For one brief second, it felt as if they were about to remove every wall between you. Then they stopped. They said something ordinary instead. Perhaps they changed the subject. Perhaps they left too quickly. Perhaps they gave you a half-smile that seemed to hold more sadness than the moment required. You may have wondered what they had nearly said. They have wondered too. They replay that moment when the world becomes quiet. In their memory, they always choose differently. They speak. You listen. The distance between you disappears before it has the chance to grow. But memory is a room where nothing can be changed. Today, they finally understood that regret is not proof of love unless it leads to courage. That realization did not come gently. It arrived when they saw something unexpected. Your soulmate was moving through an ordinary part of the day when a familiar image appeared before them. It may have been a photograph, an old message, a place connected to you, or even someone wearing a color they associate with a moment you shared. Whatever it was, it stopped them completely. For several seconds, they forgot where they were. A memory returned with startling clarity. You were standing near them, saying something sincere, something they did not fully understand at the time. The light had fallen across your face in a way they remember even now. You had offered them a kind of honesty they were not prepared to receive. Back then, they mistook your emotional strength for certainty. They believed you would always be there. They assumed there would always be another opportunity. Today, they realized how much that assumption may have cost. They found a quiet place and sat down. The sounds around them became distant. Their hands trembled slightly as they opened the conversation between you on their phone. They scrolled further back than they had in months. There were words from you they had forgotten. Gentle words. Patient words. Small attempts to understand them when they were not making themselves easy to understand. Your soulmate read one message twice. Then a third time. It was not dramatic. It did not demand anything. That was what made it so powerful. It showed that you had once seen through their confusion without punishing them for it. And suddenly, they understood something they had resisted for a long time. You were never asking them to be perfect. You were asking them to be present. That realization left them with nowhere to hide. They locked the phone and placed it beside them, but the words stayed in their mind. A deep ache moved through their chest, not because the love had disappeared, but because it had remained alive beneath everything they had used to cover it. For the first time, they asked themselves a question they had avoided. What if the person I am afraid to lose is also the person I have been afraid to choose openly? The answer unsettled them. Because choosing you openly would require more than a romantic confession. It would require them to admit where they failed. It would require them to explain why they pulled away when they wanted to come closer. It would require them to reveal a private struggle they never allowed you to see. This is the part they are most afraid to tell you. Their silence was not caused by a lack of feeling. It was caused by the intensity of it. There were moments when your soulmate felt so deeply connected to you that it frightened them. You noticed things others missed. You made them feel visible without forcing them to perform. Around you, they could not hide behind charm, busyness, or carefully chosen words. You saw the tiredness behind their smile. You heard the uncertainty beneath their confidence. You understood their quiet without treating it as emptiness. To someone who had spent years protecting their inner world, being understood felt beautiful and dangerous at the same time. So they created distance. They called it caution. They called it confusion. They called it needing time. But today they finally named it correctly. They were protecting themselves from the possibility of being loved fully because they did not know whether they could survive losing that love later. The tragedy is that by trying to prevent loss, they created the very distance they feared. And now they do not know what that distance has done to your heart. Your soulmate has imagined many versions of you since the silence began. In some, you are still waiting with tenderness. In others, you have become tired of unanswered questions. Sometimes they imagine you stronger, moving forward, learning to live without the hope you once carried. That image shakes them most. Not because they want you trapped in waiting, but because they realize love cannot ask someone to remain suspended forever. This is why the message feels urgent now. Your soulmate is no longer only afraid of rejection. They are afraid that their hesitation may have changed your understanding of what the connection meant. They wonder whether you now believe you imagined it. They wonder whether their silence made your most sincere moments feel foolish. They wonder whether you have been blaming yourself for a distance they created. And there is one thing they desperately want you to know. It was not because you were too much. You were not too emotional. You were not too caring. You were not too difficult to choose. The truth is almost the opposite. You awakened a depth in them that they did not know how to hold. But that is still not the entire message. There is another layer, one they have shared with almost no one. After the conversation earlier today, the person beside your soulmate noticed how shaken they had become. Instead of offering easy advice, they asked a question that went straight through every defense. If they were standing in front of you right now, what would you say first? Your soulmate closed their eyes. At first, they thought they would say, "I miss you." But that was not the first truth. Then they thought they would say, "I still love you." That was true, but it was not the beginning. The first words that came were quieter. "I am sorry I made you doubt what you meant to me." The sentence broke something open inside them. They lowered their head, and for a moment they could not speak. The person beside them stayed silent, allowing the truth to settle without trying to soften it. Your soulmate had spent so much time preparing to explain their own pain that they had not fully considered yours. They had imagined how difficult honesty would be for them. They had not imagined how difficult uncertainty had been for you. That was the unexpected event of today. Not a dramatic confrontation. Not a sudden announcement. A moment of understanding. Your soulmate finally saw the situation from where you had been standing. They saw the unanswered messages, the mixed signals, the emotional pauses, the closeness followed by withdrawal. They saw how confusing it must have felt to receive warmth one day and distance the next. They understood how easily silence can begin to sound like indifference when no explanation is given. For the first time, they did not defend themselves. They simply allowed the truth to hurt. And from that pain came a decision. They picked up their phone. They opened your name. Their thumb hovered above the empty message field. The first version was long. It contained too many explanations, too many attempts to control how you might respond. They deleted it. The second version sounded careful and distant. They deleted that too. Then they typed only 7 words. I need to tell you something important. They stared at the sentence for what felt like an eternity. They wanted to add, please don't ignore this. They wanted to say, I know I have no right to ask. They wanted to explain everything before you had the chance to misunderstand. But they stopped themselves. Because for once, they did not want to hide the truth beneath a flood of words. They wanted to begin simply. Honestly. Still, they did not send it. Not yet. Something else happened before they could. A notification appeared at the top of the screen. It was connected to you. Perhaps your name appeared in a place they did not expect. Perhaps someone mentioned you. Perhaps they saw a sign that your life was moving in a new direction. Whatever they saw, it changed the expression on their face instantly. They sat upright. Their heart began to pound. The message they had been preparing suddenly felt more urgent than ever. Because what appeared on that screen made them believe there may be far less time than they thought. For a brief moment, panic urged them to act impulsively. But they took a slow breath and looked again, making sure they understood what they were seeing. Then they whispered, I cannot stay silent now. This time, the words were not filled with fear. They were filled with resolve. Your soulmate stood and walked toward the window again. The city outside had grown darker. Their reflection looked back at them from the glass, and they barely recognized the person they had been only hours earlier. There was still uncertainty in their eyes. But something had changed beneath it. They were no longer trying to escape the truth. They were preparing to carry it. They returned to the phone and opened a new message. This one began differently. I have been unfair to you, and I need to explain why. They continued writing. They admitted something about the past. They revealed what they had been afraid of. They described the moment today when everything became clear. Then they reached the part that made their hands stop moving. The part they had never planned to confess. Because your soulmate has not only been hiding their feelings. They have been hiding a decision they made some time ago, a decision involving you, their future, and a promise they were too afraid to reveal. They thought that promise had been lost. They thought circumstances had made it impossible to keep. But today, something happened that brought it back into their hands. And now they are standing at a threshold, realizing that the next words they send could change both of your lives. They look at your name once more. They press their thumb against the screen. And just before sending the message, they add one final sentence, the sentence that explains why they are reaching out now, why the silence must end, and why what they discovered today has left them unable to walk away. But what they wrote in that final sentence is the one truth you are not yet prepared to hear. Because it begins with the words, I found what I thought was gone forever. My beloved child. The words lingered in the quiet room long after your soulmate whispered them. I found what I thought was gone forever. For several heartbeats, nothing moved except the gentle rise and fall of their breathing. The world outside continued as though it were an ordinary evening, but inside that small moment, everything had changed. What they found was not a forgotten object. It was not a hidden letter. It was not a photograph tucked inside an old drawer. What they found was hope. Hope they believed had disappeared beneath months of silence, unanswered questions, and the heavy weight of regret. The notification that had appeared on their phone had not told them that your story was over. Instead, it reminded them that life was still unfolding, that tomorrow had not been written yet, and that the future was still waiting for an honest heart to step toward it. For the first time in a very long while, they realized they had been measuring your connection by fear instead of truth. Fear had told them they were too late. Fear had whispered that you would never understand. Fear had convinced them that silence was safer than vulnerability. But truth spoke more quietly. Truth reminded them that genuine love is never strengthened by pretending. It grows when two imperfect people finally stop hiding behind carefully constructed walls. Your soulmate looked at their reflection one last time. The person staring back was not suddenly fearless. They were simply tired of allowing fear to decide every chapter of their life. They smiled softly, not because every problem had vanished, but because they finally understood something they had missed from the very beginning. Real courage is not the absence of uncertainty. It is choosing honesty while uncertainty still exists. With steady hands, they returned to the message. They deleted every unnecessary explanation. They removed every sentence that tried to control the outcome. They stopped writing the message they thought you wanted to hear and finally wrote the message that had been waiting inside their heart all along. I owe you the truth. I became quiet because I was overwhelmed by feelings I didn't know how to carry. I convinced myself that distance would protect us both, but all it did was create confusion. You deserved honesty, not silence. If I caused you to question your worth, I am deeply sorry. You never needed to become someone different. You were never too much. You simply reached places in my heart that no one else ever reached. Whether this message changes everything or changes nothing, I couldn't allow another day to pass without telling you the truth. They read those words only once. This time they did not erase them. This time they pressed send. The message disappeared from the screen. For a brief second, nothing happened. No reply. No dramatic music. No instant miracle. Only silence. Yet the silence felt completely different now. It was no longer filled with avoidance. It was filled with peace. Because honesty had finally replaced regret. Your soulmate stepped outside into the cool evening air. The breeze carried the scent of fresh rain, and tiny drops still clung to the leaves, reflecting the glow of nearby lights like countless small stars. They looked upward and smiled. Not because they knew exactly what tomorrow would bring, but because they had finally become the person they wished they had been long ago. Sometimes the greatest transformation happens before anyone else notices. It begins quietly inside the heart. It begins when pride gives way to humility. When excuses give way to responsibility. when fear gives way to love. And whether your paths meet again or continue in different directions, that transformation can never be taken away. Because genuine love leaves people better than it found them. It teaches patience. It teaches compassion. It teaches that another person's heart is never something to be handled carelessly. Your soulmate now understands that every unanswered moment carried a lesson. Every misunderstanding revealed the importance of clear words. Every season of waiting uncovered the value of sincerity. They no longer wish they could erase the past. Instead, they hope the lessons learned from it will shape every tomorrow. And perhaps there is something here for you as well. If you have ever wondered whether your kindness mattered, let this story remind you that kindness often leaves echoes long after a conversation ends. If you have ever questioned whether your patience was seen, remember that hearts sometimes recognize their greatest gifts only after time has uncovered their value. If you have ever carried disappointment because someone failed to express what they truly felt, do not allow that silence to become the measure of your worth. Another person's hesitation has never defined your value. Your light was never diminished because someone else needed time to find their own courage. Continue becoming the person you were created to be. Continue choosing honesty over fear. Continue offering grace without losing your self-respect. Continue believing that genuine connections are built not on perfection, but on truth. Life has a remarkable way of bringing clarity to hearts that are willing to grow. Some reunions happen between two people. Others happen within a person's own soul. Both are beautiful. Both have the power to change an entire future. So as this story comes to its close, imagine your soulmate taking one final deep breath, setting the phone gently into their pocket, and walking forward with a lighter heart than they have carried in years. Not because every answer has arrived, but because they finally stopped running from the most important conversation of their life. And perhaps, somewhere beyond this moment, another conversation is waiting. One built not on assumptions, but on understanding. Not on fear, but on honesty. Not on regret, but on hope. May your heart always recognize the quiet strength that comes from truth. May you find the wisdom to release what no longer serves you and the courage to embrace what brings genuine peace. May your days be filled with meaningful connections, gentle healing, unexpected joy, and people who value your heart with sincerity. May hope continue to rise within you even when the road ahead seems uncertain, and may every step lead you toward greater love, deeper purpose, and lasting peace. Thank you for sharing this fictional inspirational journey. If this story touched your heart, brought you comfort, or reminded you of the beauty of honest love, consider subscribing, leaving a like, and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps this channel continue creating uplifting stories that inspire hope and encourage hearts around the world. Until our next story, may peace walk beside you, may kindness guide your path, and may your heart always remain open to the beautiful possibilities that tomorrow can bring.